The story begins on a golden afternoon, the kind where laughter should fill the air, and joy should linger like music. But for Evelyn and David, that day, their wedding day, wasn't a celebration for everyone. Because while Evelyn saw love, her parents saw color. The whispers started before the cake was even cut. Her father's voice sharp, her mother's tone cold as frost. "You really married him? Out of everyone, Evelyn, you chose him." Their words stabbed through the air, and all around, the room fell silent. Eyes shifted toward David, the man she loved, the man she vowed to stand beside for life. But to her parents, he was a mistake, a stranger, a man they decided wasn't good enough because of the skin he was born in. Weeks passed, but the wound only deepened. Dinners became battlegrounds of silence. Evelyn's father refused to look David in the eye. Her mother served everyone but him. The air was heavy with unspoken judgment. And when David, calm and respectful, tried to share his success as a financial consultant, tried to offer a glimpse into the world he'd worked so hard to build, her father cut him off sharply. "We don't need lectures from outsiders." The words landed like stones. Evelyn's heart burned with rage, but David, he stayed silent. Not out of weakness, but out of discipline. Because dignity, he believed, was the greatest form of power. At night, when Evelyn cried, furious at the parents who couldn't see the truth, David would pull her close and whisper softly, "They don't have to see it now, love. The truth always comes out." And though he said it with faith, he had no idea how soon that truth would test them both. You see, Evelyn's family owned a business, a proud chain of stores passed down for 3 generations. But pride has a price, and theirs was about to come due. Years of stubbornness, outdated practices, and arrogance had brought the company to its knees. Debts piled high. Sales dropped low. But still, Evelyn's father refused to listen to anyone, especially David. David saw it coming. The spreadsheets told the story, the market trends screamed warning. He tried to offer advice gently, but her father slammed his hand on the table, his voice like thunder. "Don't think you can fix what you don't understand, boy. This is our legacy, not yours." That one word, boy, cut deep. But David didn't rise to it. He simply nodded, his silence more powerful than any insult could ever be. Months later, the storm hit. The Williams family business, the empire they'd once bragged about, was collapsing. Employees feared layoffs. Creditors demanded payment. The proud patriarch who once stood tall now looked hollowed out by fear. Evelyn pleaded, her voice trembling but steady, "Dad, maybe it's time you let David help." But he shouted back, "Absolutely not. I'd rather lose everything than put our future in his hands." And in that moment, Evelyn broke down. Because she realized her father would rather let the business die than admit the black man he hated might be the one to save it. But David? He didn't walk away. He could have said, "Let them fall." But that wasn't who he was. He wasn't driven by revenge, he was driven by love. So when the family's largest investor threatened to pull out, when the company was seconds from disaster, David acted. Quietly. Strategically. He arranged a meeting with that investor, alone. He didn't beg. He didn't plead. He presented. Calm. Sharp. Brilliant. He laid out a recovery plan, debt restructuring, operational shifts, a pivot toward modern markets. He spoke with confidence that came not from ego, but from experience. And when he finished, the investor leaned forward, impressed. "If you're the one leading this," he said, "then I'm staying in." Within days, the news spread. The investor renewed his funding. Employees sighed in relief. The business was saved. Evelyn's parents were stunned. "It can't be," her father stammered. He couldn't have, but her mother knew. Deep down, she knew. The truth she had ignored was now standing right in front of her. When David entered the office days later, every head turned. The staff who once looked past him now nodded with respect. The air had changed. Evelyn's father finally stood before him, pride trembling in his throat. "Thank you, for saving us." The words barely came out. But David didn't gloat. He simply smiled and said, "Family always helps family." Evelyn squeezed his hand. The tables had turned. But peace never lasts long where jealousy lives. Late one night, as David left a meeting, he noticed his car door slightly ajar. His briefcase was gone. Inside it, confidential plans, contracts, the blueprints to the company's rebirth. His stomach twisted. This wasn't random. Someone had targeted him. And the next morning, proof came. A rival company announced his exact plan. Word for word. The business community erupted in whispers, rumors that David had stolen ideas, that he was playing dirty. And suddenly, the man who had saved the company was being painted as its destroyer. At the next board meeting, Evelyn's father slammed the table. "What did you do, David? Did you set us up?" Everyone stared at him. Doubt in their eyes. Judgment in their silence. But David stayed composed. "I didn't leak those documents," he said firmly. "But I'll find out who did." Days turned into sleepless nights of digging through digital trails and audit logs. And then, he found it. The signature. The access authorization. The betrayal. Someone from inside the family had approved the file transfer. And when David saw the name, his chest went cold. Daniel. Evelyn's brother. It made cruel sense. Daniel, the golden child. The one who had squandered money and dodged accountability. The one David had tried to mentor, tried to help, only to be mocked in return. David confronted him privately, his voice steady. "Why, Daniel? Why would you do this?" Daniel smirked, his eyes burning with hate. "You think you belong here? You think you can just marry my sister and take my place? You're nothing but a shadow, David. And I'll make sure everyone sees it." David didn't respond. He didn't raise his hand. Because he knew that silence cuts deeper than anger ever could. But what came next would shake the entire family to its core. At the next board meeting, tension thick enough to choke on filled the room. Evelyn sat pale beside David. Daniel leaned back, smug, ready to watch him burn. But David came prepared. He slid a folder across the table. "Before you accuse me again," he said, voice low but powerful, "read this." Inside, proof. Signatures. Timestamps. Evidence. The thief wasn't David. It was Daniel. The room froze. Evelyn gasped. Her mother's hand trembled. Her father's face drained of color. And Daniel's smirk vanished, replaced by fear. The truth, undeniable, lay open on the table. Evelyn's father whispered, "No, it can't be." But it was. His son. His heir. His pride. The one he trusted more than anyone, was the traitor. Daniel's chair screeched as he stood, shouting, "You don't understand. He's taking everything from us. If we let him stay, he'll destroy this family." His words echoed through the boardroom before he stormed out, slamming the door behind him. For a moment, silence. Then Evelyn's father looked at David, shame in his eyes. I don't know what to say." And David, calm and resolute, answered softly, "Say nothing. Just decide what matters more, your pride, or your future." The room was still. It felt like redemption. Like justice. Like truth had finally found its voice. But just as peace seemed near, fate turned again. That night, Evelyn's phone buzzed. A new message. Unknown number. Her hands trembled as she opened it. A photo, grainy, dark, but clear enough. "David. leaving the office alone. And beneath it, 7 chilling words: if he doesn't walk away, he never will. Heavy with dread. David had survived prejudice, betrayal, and pride. He had saved the family that once despised him. But what he didn't know was that the real danger wasn't behind him, it was waiting in the dark ahead. Because sometimes, the greatest threat doesn't come from enemies outside the home, but from the blood that runs within it. The night was cold, the wind whispering through the empty parking lot as David locked up the office. The hum of streetlights flickered against the dark, his footsteps echoing faintly. He didn't know someone was watching. He didn't know that as he slid his briefcase into the back seat, a pair of headlights blinked once from across the street, then disappeared. Evelyn's message from earlier still haunted his mind: if he doesn't walk away, he never will. Daniel's words burned like acid through his chest. The brother-in-law who had stolen from him, betrayed him, and now threatened his life, a man so consumed by envy he was willing to destroy everything, even his own family. Back home, Evelyn paced the living room, her phone clutched tight in her trembling hand. Every creak, every sound outside made her flinch. She had begged David to stay home that night, to let the police handle it, but David only smiled softly and said, "Running from darkness doesn't stop it, love. You face it. You bring light to it." His calm was both comforting and terrifying. She didn't want to lose him, not after everything they'd survived. Hours later, the sound of tires outside made her rush to the window, headlights cutting through the fog, and there he was. Safe. For now. But something in his eyes told her it wasn't over. He closed the door gently behind him and said in a low voice, "It's time to end this, Evelyn. Once and for all." The next morning, David arrived at the family office early, his presence steady but unreadable. Employees nodded as he walked by, respect replacing the suspicion that once lingered. He called an emergency board meeting, the final confrontation that would decide not just the company's future, but his own place in the family. Evelyn's parents entered the room quietly, their faces weary. Daniel was already there, leaning against the glass wall, arms folded, that smug smirk painted back on his face. "Well," Daniel sneered, "the hero's here. Come to play the victim again?" David didn't answer. He simply opened his laptop, projecting a screen onto the boardroom wall. "I'm not here to play anything," he said calmly. "I'm here to finish what you started." A hush fell over the room. On the screen appeared files, emails, and financial transfers. David had dug deeper, deeper than anyone expected. "You didn't just leak company documents," David continued, voice steady as stone. "You sold them. To our competitors. For cash." He clicked again, and the projection changed: bank statements, time stamps, transaction IDs. All tracing back to Daniel's name. Daniel's face twitched, the mask cracking. "You're lying," he spat, but his voice shook. Evelyn's father leaned forward, whispering hoarsely, "Daniel, tell me it's not true." Daniel slammed his hands on the table, his temper snapping. "He's manipulating you. He's turning you against your own blood. This company is ours, not his." But David didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "I never wanted to take anything from you, Daniel," he said quietly. "I wanted to build something with you. But you were too busy protecting a name that was already crumbling." The silence that followed was suffocating. Evelyn's mother wept quietly in the corner. Her father sat slumped, the weight of betrayal heavy on his shoulders. For the first time, the proud man who had spent years looking down on David now looked up at him, and saw not a threat, but the man he had refused to see all along. Finally, her father stood. His voice broke, but his words were clear. "David, I owe you an apology. For every cruel thing I said. For every time I looked at you and saw less than what you are. You saved our family, and I'm ashamed it took me this long to see it." David nodded, a quiet forgiveness in his eyes. But the moment shattered when Daniel suddenly lunged, shouting, "You think this is over? You think you've won?" He grabbed David's laptop, hurling it across the room, papers scattering as chaos erupted. Evelyn screamed. Her father tried to intervene, but Daniel pushed him aside, fury consuming him. Security rushed in, restraining Daniel as he struggled, his voice echoing down the hallway. "He doesn't belong here. He'll ruin us all." His words faded as they dragged him out, leaving behind only silence and shame. Days later, the storm settled. The family business began its slow recovery, this time with David officially appointed as chief financial officer. Evelyn's parents, once cold and dismissive, now looked at him with genuine respect and gratitude. The company began to thrive again under his guidance. The once fading legacy was reborn, not through pride, but through humility, innovation, and unity. And for the first time, David felt peace. But peace, as life often reminds us, can be fragile. One evening, months after the confrontation, Evelyn and David were closing up the office together. The lights dimmed, the city skyline glowing outside. "It's over now," Evelyn whispered, leaning her head against his shoulder. David smiled softly. "Almost," he said, glancing at the framed photo on the wall, the Williams family, before all the chaos. His expression turned distant, thoughtful. Sometimes healing means letting go of what was, to protect what can be. But then, a sound. A faint buzz. His phone lit up. Unknown number. One new message. He frowned and opened it. A video file. The screen flickered, then played, grainy footage from a prison security camera. Daniel, in an orange jumpsuit, sitting at a metal table. He looked straight into the camera, a cold grin spreading across his face. Then he leaned forward and whispered, "You really thought I was the only one?" The video cut to static. David froze. Evelyn's breath caught. The air thickened with dread. Outside, the wind howled, carrying the faint echo of thunder. The narrator's voice grows low, steady, heavy with warning. David had defeated prejudice. He had overcome betrayal. He had saved the very family that once despised him. But as the storm rolled back in, one truth became clear: some battles end in forgiveness, but others begin in the shadows. David stared out the window, his reflection staring back, calm, resolute, but now haunted by what lay ahead. And as lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating his face, his phone buzzed again, a single message appearing on the screen. "You saved their business, but can you save her?" Evelyn turned to him, her eyes wide, fear spreading across her face. The camera pans out, rain pouring against the glass, thunder rumbling deep in the distance. David thought the war for respect was over. But what he didn't know was that love and loyalty were about to be tested like never before. Because sometimes, the greatest threat doesn't come from enemies or rivals, it comes from those you thought were gone. Justice was only the beginning.